You are not alone. And now there are two resources that I've put together specifically for your journey. This is your host, Rachel Bernstein. I am an educator and a therapist and a cult specialist, and I am very excited to announce Restart and Restore, a journal for survivors of manipulation, and a companion notebook that I've put together to go with it that has people's stories that they've shared with me that they wanted to share with you, and some wonderful quotes from people whose thoughts I truly admire, and more pages and writing prompts for you to continue with the writing that can help you along your healing journey. This isn't just another blank journal. It's a trauma-informed recovery companion, and it offers psychoeducation on the mechanics of manipulation and control and therapeutic writing prompts to explore your history and your strengths, practical exercises that transform insights into some actionable steps, and the freedom to heal at your own pace. You can do it in the time frame that works for you without any judgment or pressure. Whether you joined the organization or the relationship that was controlling as a teen or as an adult, Restart and Restore provides the structure and, I think, validation needed to process your experiences safely. I'm also excited to share, beyond the journal and its companion notebook, that I'm currently working on a second journal specifically for those born and raised in high control groups or high control family units, as their healing journey often involves different and specialized challenges. Restart and Restore and its companion notebook are available now, and you can find the link in the show notes. Thank you very much. I hope it's helpful to you or to someone you love.
Welcome to IndoctriNation, a weekly conversation series about protecting yourself from systems of control. I'm your host, Rachel Bernstein.
Hello, everyone. Today on the show, we have Camille Lewis. She is an assistant professor of communication studies at Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina. She holds a PhD from Indiana University in rhetorical studies. Her most recent book, Klandamentalism, great book title, Bob Jones at the Intersection of Revivalism, Politics, and White Supremacy, tackles the destructive melding of conservative evangelicalism with the Ku Klux Klan. You can read more about Klandamentalism at her Substack. It was great to talk to Camille. Sometimes you talk to people and you feel like you've known each other a long time. That's how I felt when I was talking to her. So I look forward to having you hear our conversation right now. Here's Camille. I am delighted to have Camille Lewis on the show today to talk about something really, really, really kind of spicy and interesting. And so, Camille, welcome. Take a moment, if you can, to introduce yourself.
Sure. I am Camille Lewis, and I am an assistant professor of communication studies at Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina. And my most recent book has just come out, my fourth book, and this was the tough one. It's called Klandamentalism, Bob Jones at the Intersection of Revivalism, Politics, and White Supremacy.
You know, every once in a while, I have people on the show who help us make links who help us understand the history of something and how it got there, or what an organization or a philosophy or a theology might not be telling you about how it's really connected and overlaps with other things. We've had on this show John Atack, who is a former Scientologist who has done a lot of research, who was talking about the link between Scientology and the occult and Nazism, and just the language that is overlapping. And
Ooh, I need to hear that.
right, yeah, definitely check that out. And his book is really, really fascinating, and it's a lot of historical overlap where you see where one idea kind of led into the other, or someone had an influence over someone else, but that the lingo is the same, the ideas are the same, and you just don't know that that's what you're involved in, something that dovetails with something else that you may or may not think is okay. So tell us a little bit about your history so we understand what brings you to be interested in this subject.
I grew up as an independent fundamental Baptist. My parents joined that church right after I was born. So when I thought of church, I thought of that independent fundamental Baptist church. And when that church started talking about private education, Christian day schools, we joined up with that. So I was educated in BJU Christian day schools from first grade through 12th grade. And if you were bookish in that world, if you were, kind of a nerd, then you would go to Bob Jones. That was kind of like this automatic thing. It just didn't really question it. So I attended BJU and I got 2 degrees there. So Bob Jones University is here in Greenville, South Carolina. I got a Bachelor of Arts in English and a Master of Arts in Public Speaking. And then I met my husband there, and we're still married. We've been married 35 years. And so that was the best part, frankly, of that place. But we taught. After we both earned our 2 degrees, we taught there. In the middle, we took a leave of absence to get our doctoral degrees. So I have a PhD from Indiana University in rhetorical studies and American studies, and all my PhD minor classes were in the religious studies department. So I decided to study my own roots. I defended my dissertation, came back, we taught there, and I had an opportunity to publish my dissertation, which is a big deal. Usually those things are never read again. And so a very fine scholar was interested in publishing it in his series, and BJU said, no, you can't do that. At the very same time that they were telling me I can't publish, which is astounding, they told me the campus daycare gave me a memo telling me to sign it, and not asking me, but telling me to sign it so that they could spank my 2.5-year-old. And I got advice from a social worker who said, don't you just not sign that because you don't want a mistake to happen. You need to tell them you're not allowed to hit my child. And it happened around the same time I was publishing, and I got in trouble with the dean for that too. So it was just kind of one of the things that I think of high control groups or cults is that they don't give you the opportunity to know exactly what it is that you did wrong. You did everything wrong. And so that was this bundle of stuff. I couldn't do anything right from that point on. So we left in 2007. We got an ultimatum. They asked us to write a document about our sin theology, which is a weird phrase that doesn't mean anything, because theology is about God, sin isn't. So that doesn't make sense. And my husband's a musician. I'm a rhetorician. Why are you asking us to do theological work? But I figured out that they probably meant our sanctification, ideas of sanctification, or our soteriology. So I wrote a document. I just consulted good sources. I wrote a document explaining soteriology, and I got good sources. That's how you do it if you're an academic. And my husband edited it. We submitted it. And they said, we have some concerns. And they said, they did not like the idea of God's grace and God's kindness, and that you had to work for it. they said, if you cannot hold your position without publicly presenting it to students, colleagues, or others at a distance from the university, we must come to a parting of ways. So there was the ultimatum. And within 10 days, my husband had another job and we had resigned. So that was in 2007. That's the brief version of the story.
I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure. That was Cliff Notes for sure. But it's still, oh my goodness, you've already tapped into so many issues. One of the things that I'm noticing is this idea that you need to be wrong, that you need to be sinful, that you need to be blowing it. And, I feel like so many groups need for that to be the norm, to be something that you can never sort of graduate out of. Like you're guilty till never proven innocent. Right.
And they have to repeat that or remind you of that so that there's no way out. I mean, at this point in my life, when I was getting all of this, I was 38 years old. I had 4 pregnancy losses. I had 2 living children. I had a PhD. I thought maybe I had earned some respect, some deference. False. I hadn't at all.
Yeah, right. I don't know if you have the luxury when you're in it to wonder about these things because you're too close to it. But I think now after leaving, there can be a lot of trying to discern why it works for an organization to have you constantly be guilty till never proven innocent. And maybe it makes it necessary. It makes it that there's a reason for it to still exist and to still be watching over you, because if everyone could get this good education on how to be a good fill in the blank and then move on, then do they need to?
Then they're not beholden to it. Yeah.
You're not beholden. They're not necessary. I mean, I wonder who it's for.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've usually used, in my head, I use the metaphor of a hothouse plant. A tomato in a hothouse can't really ever leave. It's for that space always. And of course, it doesn't produce anything anybody wants when you think about it, but it's always in that space. That's one metaphor that I've used to understand it. I also tell myself sometimes that it's learned helplessness because you're dependent upon that hothouse to exist. And so you don't do anything. You don't change anything. You don't alter it. You need the hothouse.
Wow, really, that's very interesting. So here you were in this situation where you were not being given really the respect that you should. And you were also, it seems like you were not being seen for who you were,
Oh no, absolutely not. And it was so strange. Looking back, I wasn't asking for a lot. It's not like I was asking for big things. I wanted to publish my dissertation, which was a normal course of events. I wanted them not to hit my child. That's not really that radical. Not really. I think any kind of standing up, any kind of autonomy is suspicious in that world.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Any kind of autonomy except with leadership, right? They can have.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, only them. Yeah, and it has to be at the very top, too. We still get, because we live here in the same town with this place. So we still get some heat occasionally.
What kind of heat do you mean?
You can't say that. You don't understand. You're hurting BJU, and that's God's place. From people with some amount of power. I'm trying to be discreet, and often what happens is that they call Grant. My husband's name is Grant. They call Grant in to kind of say, take care of her. Shut her up. Well, that ain't gonna happen. He we're equals. We're mutual. We defer to each other. So he's not going to tell me to shut up. I'm not going to tell him to shut up either. But that's not his world. He currently has a note on his phone of several bullet points. If someone does it again, to tell them different ways to tell them to shut up, and to say, look, she's a scholar on what she's talking about, so you need to knock it off. So he's loaded for bear. I love it. That he's got it right there. So
That's very cool. Okay. I'm curious also, just going back to sort of the personal coming out of such a long stretch of certain kind of religious teachings, a certain environment. What was that like for you before we get into sort of the intellectual and all of that? I'm just curious about your transition away from it.
it was very exhausting is the word I'm feeling right now, because we did lose we were pushed out of our church shortly after we left BJU. It wasn't going to change. That was going to happen. I now realize that that was inevitable. I didn't think it was at the time. And so that was our social group, our friendships, our jobs both changed. Now my family, they didn't change. That didn't change at all. I'm very thankful for that, because a lot of people lose their families. But my mom and dad were still on my side, and still they understood why we left, and that wasn't an issue. But everything else was gone. Yeah. Your medical doctor is through BJU. The post office that you went to is at BJU. The cleaners that you went, all those kinds of little soft things, or the easy things in your life are gone. So we adjusted, but it did take time. So there was a lot of soul searching, which is what led to my research. I think academics, as a rule, when we get in a crisis moment, our therapy is research. So I don't know why I was impelled or compelled to do this, but I started to look up other people from BJU who had been pushed out.
Oh, interesting.
And there were a lot.
Oh, really?
There were a lot of people.
Huh.
And I found their archives, the stuff they had donated, their letters to other universities. And I realized, oh, this has happened before. It's not me. This is a problem. So, BJU sets up the structure so that it is impermeable. And if you question it, then you're out. And a lot of people have there's a lot of people in their wake.
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's incredible. These kinds of things, of course, are hidden, right? Because you had to dig to get
Yes.
them. And there's a reason that they're hidden, but it also lets me know how many people don't come forward, right? Because if you have to kind of uncover, then there isn't this forum for people that probably feel safe to do it, or they might think then they're going to lose everything by doing it. I just wonder, now with you telling these stories, and like, with our social media person, Andrew, who is at Bob Jones, just coming
Right.
forward is atypical. And there
Mhm.
must be a lot of reasons for that.
And with Andrew, one of the things that I was so struck by, as he's been talking and processing, is that he's expressing this situation with a Gen Z vocabulary. I would express it with a Gen X vocabulary, and it's interesting how it's a different thing. They're the same, because the university is the same, but the way people can find empathy, I think, is different. So it's awesome that Andrew found a path forward to find others, and I think he has and is too as he's going forward. I really appreciate that about him.
Sure. And it makes sense that you would notice that, being someone who studies rhetoric, right?
Yeah, you're right. I know. I
Sure.
do. That is,
Right? You're a linguist, and you
yeah.
notice. But it's the same message, just translated in different ways through different generations. And so what are the main and overlapping points that you've noticed?
The moment that a person, any individual, makes a decision for themselves, and that's that autonomy, they are suspect. If you're going along to get along, just if you're passive about that world and living in that world, you could probably do wrong things even, and they don't care. But once you stand up, you can't do anything right. And that was Andrew's story, and some of the folks that he interviewed or has interviewed. And then I know that's true with me. Now I'm getting into the book research, but the one thing that I am still processing from my book research is what happened to Bob Jones Sr., who's the founder of Bob Jones University. What happened to his first wife? She went from a healthy co-ed, a graduate. She got a baccalaureate degree at Judson College. And within a 1 year of marriage, she had lost weight. Her hair was messed up. She looked maybe like she had some damage on her lip, like she had been hurt.
Oh, no.
And she died within 10 and a half months of getting married. And something happened. And so I traced that to figure out what happened to her, because there's a lot of lying. He lied about that situation a lot. And I still don't know exactly what happened. But she, I think, was at the very least, a victim of neglect.
Yeah. Oh, that's very sad.
When a woman, I would probably say when anybody, a child, when a woman, a child, or a man speaks up and disagrees with the leader, they're going to get slapped down.
Yeah, right. Oh, it's very sad.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Mm.
So that too is what Andrew went through, and what some of the folks he's interviewed have gone through too.
But also the lack of oversight, right? Within an organization where things are known, if, I grew up in a synagogue, if like the rabbi's wife, if there was something wrong, we would know, like we would send food or check on her or find out, and there would be transparency because it's a community.
Right.
But I think here you start to notice things that are really troubling, and then the person's gone.
And there's always that suspicion too, which you just described, where someone brings a meal over because you broke your ankle, so what's wrong. There's transparency, but there's also care. There's a suspicion with everyone. You can't show you care because that puts a mark on you. Before we left, there was a friend of ours who, we left in 2007. So she and her husband left in 2005, and we were I've told her the story, so she knows the story. This isn't new. But when she left, we were in a departmental meeting, and the departmental chair said about them, he said, their name is Black. And he raised himself up in the chair. Their name is Black. And yeah. And I thought to myself, that's wrong. That isn't right. They're my friends. I'm going to be their friends. It doesn't matter if you don't like them or if say they're persona non grata. I know what happened. They're fine. But to be caring to them would have been suspicious. So that friendship is suspicious in that world.
Right. So interesting. So interesting. And it's hard also when, you've been involved in something for so many years, you can feel like you're part of the community, but then it seems like you get then reminded that you're not, you're on the outside.
Right. And that's what he was doing when he did that. You're right. He was communicating to all of us that if you disagree with the administration, then your name is Black.
Right. Yeah. It's hard. I work with a lot of people who have been in relationships with malignant narcissists, who have been in a variety of different cultic groups, religious groups. And they'll talk about this where they say that their points didn't accrue. Like it didn't matter, right? How much you had done up until a certain point. It was all gone.
Yes. And that fits with the friend that I just described. And it fits with me. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. And so it doesn't and Andrew was only, if you will, an undergraduate. And the rest of us, these faculty, have been there for years. We've thought of ourselves as lifers, is the word we would use. That doesn't matter. You don't accrue points. That's exactly right.
Yeah, it is interesting to see that. And that's hard because then you wonder, did I waste all my time? Why was I working so hard?
Yeah. Well, and that sunk cost fallacy. You think, well, I've been here, I got to stay because I put all this into it. That does keep you. And then they'll tell you it's not any better anywhere else, which is a lie. It's better everywhere else. Just gonna say better
everywhere.
Everywhere else.
Okay, that's pretty clear.
I cannot say that enough.
Okay. So tell me about the books leading up to this book. You said the other ones were easier to put together.
So my dissertation was analyzing how Bob Jones University claims to be separatist, but it talks its way into the public sphere, essentially. They're not that separatist. It's always a negotiated vocabulary. Then I did a book called White Nationalism and Faith, which was an anthology. So it's a collection of speeches that promote white nationalism with religious vocabulary from the Civil War through contemporary times. And their opposites, people that critique that meshing of white nationalism and faith. So that was satisfying because I could see the back and forth personally. That was personally satisfying. Then in 24, a friend named Melody and myself produced another anthology on the Equal Rights Amendment, which was absolutely a delight because we traced how women argued for equality over the last century in the United States. So that was just a joy project. That was delightful. And then this book, Klandamentalism, which I thought of as a sequel to the first book, because in the first book I was inside BJU when I wrote it, inside fundamentalism, and I was trying to be very gentle and very ladylike, and you can see that in the book. It's all about how BJU can better woo their public and be more gentle. Well, that's when I was trying to portray BJU as kind of a beauty queen. This is what's behind the facade, which is a very different character of the book. When in 2008, here's the deal. When 2008, when I heard a National Review reporter say something, so 2008, she said, everybody knows that, her name is Lisa Schifrin. Everybody knows that Obama's parents were communists because they were a mixed race marriage. And everybody knows that that was what communists do and did in the 60s. And I thought, wait a minute, everybody knows that? Yes, I heard that at BJU in the pulpit in chapel, but how is this so predominant that you are saying that everybody knows this? So after we left, and we were already gone at this point, I started to dig into what did Bob Jones University and what did the Bob Jones family really say about race? And what I discovered, the essence, is that Bob Jones Sr. was a member of the Ku Klux Klan in Alabama. And I didn't discover that fact until 2018. That's when I found the evidence. Before that, when I was just looking at the parallel streams with the Ku Klux Klan and Bob Jones Sr., I would break out in hives. And I thought, now, wait a minute, this is strange. I was joking with my friend once. I said, I'm breaking out in hives. I said, I think I'm allergic to the Ku Klux Klan. And he said, you need to stop doing that. That's a problem. But what I was realizing, I mean, it took me a while to figure that out, is that it was the way the Ku Klux Klan treated its community, treated its neighbors, the women and the Black folks and the immigrants in their neighborhoods, is the way BJU treats its employees and its students. And that's why I was breaking out in the hives. It was familiar. And I gotta figure this out. I gotta unravel what is actually going on here. And that's why it took 15 years, because it took breaks and watching I Love Lucy in the evenings a lot, and a lot of confronting of a very difficult ideology.
Yeah. Oh, very difficult, very disturbing.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I'm really wondering about these connections. I mean, I think that it was, to a certain degree, permissible. I mean, it was sort of cool, if you were willing to take a stand for rights and white rights or whatever they're.
Yeah. Right. States' rights. Yeah. 100% Americanism was the phrase they used.
Right. And it is really difficult when there is this melding of spiritual life with what is just seen, I think, as blind hatred. Because you want spiritual life, even though it's not often, but you want it to be inclusive and to see everyone as equals in God's eyes.
And to make you gentler.
Yeah, right.
I mean, right? Just to mellow you and soften you and to encourage you to be kind. I think it was Lincoln, it said, the better angels of ourselves. That's what you want us to lean towards. But yeah, not in white nationalism and not in Klandamentalism.
Right. There is something it's beyond disappointing. It's alarming. It's unnerving. It's a lot of other words. When you see that happening, and then you can start to wonder how much of that was infused, right? And you can start needing to really decipher that. Like, what was I taught?
Yeah, what was I taught? What was good? What was destructive? I told my student this a few weeks ago. So Bob Jones University, if you or your listeners don't know this, did have in the 80s, did go to the Supreme Court to defend their so-called religious belief, to protect it, as under religious freedom, to not allow folks to marry someone that's not part of their race, whatever that means. Okay, because the race is a strange word anyway. They had decided that there were three races, and they had decided that white, Asian, and Black, and that you could not cross that racial barrier, which is pure white supremacy. That's it. They would defend it, saying, "Oh no, we're not white supremacists. We believe this for all people." But they did go to the Supreme Court. They lost the case, and so I knew that was floating around, but I didn't know how pervasive it was. I didn't know how core it was to their ideology.
Right. So I'm wondering how you were able to start finding this information out. Like, if people are trying to uncover, how do you do it?
Well, the good news for my project was that because I believe Bob Jones Sr. was a malignant narcissist, he loved the attention that newspapers gave him. So he would talk up a blue streak everywhere he went. And these are sometimes little tiny weeklies, little papers who would publish he would talk to them and they were looking for content, so they would publish it. So I have a lot of record of what he said. And that's how I decided to start with this. I decided to find out where he was every week of his life, his public life. So from 1896, which is when he gave his first public speech, he was 12, to 1946, which was about his decline. So 50 years. I have it all traced out where he was. I have it in the big spreadsheet. And there were a lot of lies I uncovered because he'd say one thing and then the other would be true. And he'd go back and forth. Because he loved the attention, he was just saying whatever he wanted to say to get more attention. And that's when I saw the real him. And then when I found in Marshall, Texas, because the morning and afternoon newspapers in 1924 were competing for subscribers, they each hired stenographers and they printed full transcripts of 6 weeks of sermons. So I had 2 copies of 42 sermons and I could see his whole story. And for a person who claims to be a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, he mentions Jesus twice in all those 42 sermons. That's it. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not right. That's not what anybody was signing up for. But he was the subject of most of the sentences. So, which I guess was, when you think about it of course it was, he's a malignant narcissist, but that's not what anybody signed up for. That's not what we were supposed to be doing. That's wrong. So that is one of the strategies. Also, I'm banned from the BJU campus because cults don't let you know exactly what you did wrong. I can explain how that process happened, but I'm banned. So I can't go to their archives. And so what that allowed me to do, or what prompted me to do, is to go, well, since I'm not allowed there, I'll go everywhere else. So I've been to dozens of archives where I've gotten way, way more material that hasn't been Jones washed. It's just because they don't care. Nobody else cares. And so I've been able to see the real Bob Jones.
Nice. Oh, that's been handy.
Yes.
I think about how many politicians we've found out about over the years who were Klan members, sometimes high level, which is super disturbing. And, you want the people who are the heads of things.
To be honorable.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
And not to hate anybody who's not, Northern European or however we're going to narrowly define folks.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, so I'm curious what you just mentioned before about how that happens, that you're kind of not told, enough specifics to know why you're banned and what that's about.
In 2012, my dad had just gone into long-term care. So my mom and dad lived here in Greenville, and my brother and his family lives here in Greenville. So we were glad that we were all next to each other and we could all check in on each other. But it was around Labor Day in 2012. And then shortly thereafter, sometime in September, the president of Bob Jones University, Stephen Jones, sent a letter saying, I want to meet, to discuss some things. Well, he knows where I stand. Whenever someone with a lot of power and a high control group asks you to meet, it's to yell at you. That's just the way it goes. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to subject myself to that. It happens every single time. They may say they're just want to reach out, but every single time it's to yell at you. So I didn't answer. I didn't say yes, no, anything. Again, my dad was in long-term care just those weeks. And by October, I got my ban letter that said, since you did not respond, you are no longer allowed on campus, which is kind of a soft ban. I've shown it to my lawyer friends and they said this wouldn't hold up in court, but I'm not going to test it. Why would I test it?
Yeah, I mean, in those moments, I really wonder if it hadn't been for one excuse, it would have been for another. Like, okay, fine, you didn't get back to them.
Yeah.
Their feelings were hurt. Well, okay, fine.
They're so tender. They're bless
Right?
their little hearts. They're just so tender with their feelings.
I love that. I love that expression. The bless their hearts, really.
The Southern things I've picked up, yes.
So, right. But I think, again, not accruing points that suddenly you're banned, but okay, fine. Tell us more about what you notice about the Klan or whatever, more from your book, because, I mean, even though I want people to buy it, so you don't have to give all the, everything.
Well, I discovered a lot of very strange things. Now, the reason that it makes sense that he was a Klansman is that most of the folks, the men that were part of the rising middle class in the 19 teens and 20s in the South, so they were just getting money. They were just being able to control their own destiny, and they were joiners, meaning they like to join groups, and so they thought they could pool their influence as white supremacists by joining the Klan. So the very rich didn't join because they didn't need it, and the very poor didn't join because they couldn't afford it. It was pricey. I don't remember the dues, but it was kind of pricey. So he fits that label. He was part of the rising middle class. And it also he was involved with every political fight in Alabama. And that political fight was almost always between those people that didn't like the Klan and those people that did like the Klan. And he was on the Klan side every single time. That's what I document. I get really into the weeds with that. But also, if you set up the story that the Klan would tell, the way they used the Bible, the way they donned themselves in righteousness was very similar to the way Bob Jones Sr. talked as well. So they were just the same. I was alarmed. They were the same methods, the same ideology, the same pulpits. They were just the same people. So that's why I said Klandamentalism smashing together Ku Klux Klan with fundamentalism.
What was some of the similar rhetoric that you notice or style?
They're always talking in superlatives. This is the best thing ever. This is the greatest thing ever. which might be a clue to their leader's narcissism. As I say this, and I hear recent similarities to other political discourse, that might be what's going on. Their disagreement is always with identities, not with ideas. We might debate whether or not we should get rid of the penny, which is a fine thing to talk about, and that's an issue. That's an idea. But if all of a sudden I'm picking on another person because they're, from another state, they're from Ohio, I'm from Michigan. They're from Ohio, and I'm saying, "Oh, you Ohioans, you're all the same," then it's a clash of identity. For the Ku Klux Klan and for fundamentalists, it's always a clash of identity. It's always us versus them. And then what also was strange to me is that they don't propose any action, public action. It's always secret. It's always behind closed doors. It's always cloaked, hooded. That was odd. And they hate women. They hate women. They just hate them. Anything they do, even if they're white women, even if they're their own wives and they're church ladies, they don't like them because they want to be in charge. So that was alarming. I think that is and then of course, like I said earlier, Jesus is not present, except he's a tool. He's something they wield, like you might hold a Bible upside down for a photo op, but they don't really see anything else. He, in all that set of sermons I got, he never says an ugly word about any middle-class white male. Now, there's others that are richer than he doesn't like. He never picks on the poor. He doesn't say anything negative about Black folks, but I think he didn't need to, is my hunch on that. Everybody kind of already agreed with him on that. But he says the more ugly things about women, that they are loud, that they're taking over the home, they're taking over the government, they're taking over the church, they're butting into men's spaces, they're jazzing down the streets because they're dancing, which is weird. They dress in a way that makes men fall. When he said this, the first time he said this, makes men commit crimes. He's victim blaming. The first time he said this was in 1911. If you go look at the clothing that women were wearing, he says you can stop street mashers today if women would just go back to the old-fashioned way of dressing. So street mashers were men that maybe they just catcalled, but maybe they did attack women on the street. Any kind of unwanted attention that men would give to women. And so if you look at their clothing, it's pretty loose. I mean, it's looser than it was for the Victorians with the corsets. Maybe you'd see an elbow, maybe you'd see an ankle. It was not immodest by any stretch. And he always said that same thing, no matter what was in style. Because he started that in 1911. He would say that complaint until the 40s, and there's a wide range of clothing in those decades. So just it didn't matter what women were doing, it was wrong.
Yeah. Right. Can't win. Right. I saw this meme that I loved, and it said, women's bodies are not responsible for men's thoughts.
Oh, that's good. That's concise.
Isn't that good? I love that.
That is good.
I love the nuggets you can hang on. What I also have always found interesting is that when a sentence starts with, these people who are committing crimes wouldn't do it if, or these men who are committing these crimes wouldn't do it if, and it leaps over to what it seems to me like a leap. If women, whatever, fill in the blank. What? No.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go back a second. Right? Exactly. Yes. These men wouldn't commit crimes if you taught them to not commit crimes. Period. Like, let's keep this on the men. Why are the women even involved in this sentence?
There were I think it was 1926 and 1927. There was a man and I document this, in Montgomery, in southern Alabama, who killed his wife. It was this huge case, and Bob Jones presumably converted him in prison. And so now he was using that as a case. It kind of like, you still hear preachers doing this, where they convert Ted Bundy or whomever. So this was a huge case, and the fault was not with the man who murdered his wife. He was convicted and sentenced to the electric chair. It was not with the man who murdered his wife. It was those bootleggers. They did it because if he hadn't had liquor, he wouldn't have killed his wife.
Oh my goodness. Like if they're so powerful, why can they not have self-control?
Right. Yeah.
I always wondered about that.
It's always that weird dichotomy. They are the powerful ones who are very weak.
Right. Yes. Whatever works to explain things away, I guess. You also mention, you talk about revivalists. So tell me about that. Let's discuss that for a moment.
My students asked me this a few weeks ago, and I was amazed at how much I presume people know what that is, because they were like, "What are you talking about?" And I do have some videos of that. So, if in 1924, with that revival, there would be a particular way they would handle it. Was kind of reminiscent of the Second Great Awakening more than the First Great Awakening. So evangelicals in general trace their genealogy to one of the Great Awakenings. The First Great Awakening was before we were a country, and it was up in New England. The Second Great Awakening was in the 1830s, and it was predominantly in what they considered the West, the frontier, like Kentucky and Indiana, but there were some up in New York State too. That's what people like Bob Jones and Billy Sunday were trying to replicate in the 20th century, was the enthusiasm that happened in the 1830s. So they would build tabernacles out of pretty cheap wood, so temporary buildings sitting on benches, hard benches, and there would be sawdust to keep the mud down going along the aisles. And they would last, for Bob Jones, they were always in mid-size manufacturing towns. And they would hold evening events. Usually all the Protestant ministers would sponsor it. And they would hold evening events every night of the week, except sometimes they'd take off Sunday, sometimes not. And everybody was invited. And it was like a circus. It was really like a circus. There would be the churches would sponsor a choir. They'd have a special soloist. There might be a portable organ that they would use to sing very, banal and easy to sing hymns. And in the 20s, this happened all over the country. When the revivalist would get up to start his speech, and the speeches that they used were usually stock speeches. He'd deliver the same speech over and over and over, and maybe adapt a little bit to that area. In the 20s, the revivalist, who was always traveling, it was not usually a minister that had stayed there. He was going around to all these different places, like a salesman. He'd get up, and somewhere in the middle of the series, all of a sudden, a group of men in Klan hoods and robes would start marching down the aisle, and they'd hand him a check or an envelope with money. And he was supposed to take it and then say some positive words about the Klan. And this happened frequently. If there was a Klan group in that town, in the 20s especially, they were going to give an offering to show their strength, to show their support for Protestantism, and then to get some sort of approval, some sort of approval from the evangelist. And at the end of these sermons, there was always some sort of a call for people to come forward to make some sort of a decision. It might be to stop going to movies. It might be to vote a certain way. And it might be to get converted. And Bob was never very good about what he meant when he'd say get converted. He wasn't very clear. So just join him in whatever he's asking you to join him in.
Just the visual I'm trying to picture, right? If you have Klan members coming down, there are going to be some people there who are going to find that really alarming, disconcerting. And I'm wondering, did that ever create a division or people really worrying
By the late 20s, people were starting to speak out about it. Now, in 1924, when this happened in Texas, there were some, because I looked for the criticism, because I couldn't believe everybody was on board with this. And you found other Protestants saying, this isn't right. Now, they didn't like the Klan, though, not because it was white supremacist. They didn't like the Klan because they promoted vigilante violence. So they were fine. They would say that often. Oh, we don't mind, their principles are fine, but they're acting badly. It was kind of a weird tone policing for the 20s. In time, people objected, but it took time. They had to know that there were others out there like them, in my opinion.
So were there next generations in that same family who, or in the leadership that did this same sort of thing?
That's a great question. I don't have any evidence that Bob Jones Jr. was a member of the Klan. I don't have that evidence. I do have evidence lots of evidence, that his peers, is the people that were his contemporaries who were on the board of Bob Jones University, were Klansmen.
Oh, wow. Oh, really? Wow.
So in Spartanburg. Now, their families have asked me, that's what they told me. They were board members at BJU in Greenville, South Carolina, and they lived in Spartanburg, and they were Klansmen. The families asked me to not reveal their names ever, but I do know that did exist.
I think about how often people, like when we talk about Andrew, and Andrew has told his story, to a certain degree on the podcast. And I say to a certain degree because there's always more to share. But
Sure.
How many times people leave a situation like this, having been condemned for who they are through no fault of their own, through whatever, birth, and they leave adopting that notion that in this self-critical way that you've been taught to be, that there is something wrong with you, or women in organizations like this also, we can't be trusted, and we are the cause of our own being victimized, etc. When you start to see that the leadership actually follows ideas that are so extremely hateful, I wonder if it helps you feel like, oh, wait, this was sort of never about me. This was just about someone seeing the whole world in a certain way.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I felt when I discovered all those faculty members who'd been pushed out and how they found other therapeutic means. Like I remember one person writing to Strom Thurmond, who was the senator, our longtime senator here in South Carolina, who said, this was a former student, and he wrote from New York City, and he said to Strom Thurmond, you be careful about Bob Jones. He's a monster.
Monster. Wow.
The word was monster.
And so then you also wonder about oversight, because if someone in government knows someone else to be a monster, why are they still doing what they're doing? Like, how come they still have this level of power, whether they're there in person or as emeritus or whatever else? But yeah, why does that happen?
That's a good question. Been thinking about that a lot in the last couple of weeks with the potential for more files to get out in the open and get our scrutiny. When people do awful things and other people find out about it, that gives the person that found out about it power. And so they wield that over them. One of the things that I learned when I left Bob Jones is that all the people that were like me, the good kids, the kids that obeyed the rules, I got 11 demerits total in 4 years. So the good kids were the ones that were criticizing BJU. But the kids that were rotten, and they've been rotten in all kinds of ways, rotten in breaking the rules, rotten in breaking the law, rotten in being cruel to other people, whatever you want to define as rotten, they were the ones that were defending BJU. I think everybody who has risen up the rank, just about everybody, and most of the people who rise up the ranks in that organization, BJU has some sort of dirt on them that they hold over them. And I think that might parallel what we see in the broader culture. The people that rise up others have dirt on them that keeps It helps them wield power. So, yeah, oversight. Yeah, we had the Grace Report. Why didn't anything? I don't know if you've heard about the Grace Report. Why didn't anything happen? Well, maybe the whole kit and caboodle is corrupt. I wonder that sometimes.
No, I'm sure. I'm sure. We did have someone on talking about the Grace Report, but it's been a while. Would you mind just taking a moment and explaining that?
So in 2014, the organization, the Godly Response to Abuse in the Christian Environment, or GRACE, which was run by Billy Graham's grandson, Boz Tavizian, completed and then published a report, a 2-year comprehensive investigation into BJU's handling of sexual assault. And they did not do well. It's 300 pages. They covered up a lot. They treated women and victims, and not just women, but the victims very, very badly. And nothing came of it. No court cases, no arrests, nothing. Nobody was fired. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. Except the only difference is that we have the document. We as a public have the document. So that is something, but nothing else happened. And you wonder why. Why is everybody looking away?
Yeah. And so, I mean, it also is pretty devastating for people who have participated in something like that, and they've come forward with their story, and it's not an easy thing to retell.
Yes.
And you have to get the nerve to do it and feel supported, and then to have nothing come of it. Oof.
I mean, and there were a lot of folks. And some of them and I have talked, we've talked. They said, I'm this case in the report. And so, and they're still frustrated. Like, what did I do all that for?
Right.
It's demoralizing.
Yes, demoralizing. Perfect word for it. Right. So I know we have about 10, 15 minutes left, but I wanted to offer to you if there were certain things that you wanted to make sure to mention to help illuminate things.
My dad was raised Jehovah's Witness. My mom was raised Catholic. And my dad would always tell the story that his parents said to him, you can be any kind of Christian you want, Henry, just don't be a Baptist. And we all laughed because we thought, well, Grandma and Grandpa don't understand, because we became Baptists. And we thought they just don't know what it means to be Baptist. Well, I found out in all of my research that Grandma and Grandpa knew more than we did, because the Baptist they were talking about was a Klansman Baptist who pastored in Fort Worth, Texas, and Detroit. J. Frank Norris, who's a terrible human being, violent, vicious, white supremacist. And Grandma and Grandpa were trying to tell us, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by that hateful person who cloaks his hate in religious language. And we missed it. It took me a few decades to figure out exactly what they were trying to warn us about. And that's kind of my purpose too, is to amplify their warning. Don't be fooled by people who cloak their hate in lovely words, because it is not safe. It's not safe for anybody. It's even not safe for the white men in charge. But I know it's not safe for people like me.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely not. How do you adopt that? How do you... I mean, sometimes it's impossible, I realize. So this is not at all to blame the victims in these situations. So sometimes it is impossible. But how can you tell? What are some warning signs? What are some things to watch out for that kind of alert you to, like even if the most you get is a but that's enough to just act on or maybe notice?
I think the big thing is, where's the conflict? Because conflict is going to happen. And as a person who teaches argumentation, and I kind of run towards conflict, which is kind of weird, but I want to understand it. So conflict's not bad, but if your conflict is over another identity, a person's identity, like they're an immigrant, or they're Black, or they're Polish, or they're atheist, or they're agnostic. I'm thinking of all the varieties of things that I heard as a fundamentalist, or they used to be a fundamentalist. If it's always over that identity, it's going to be trouble. Then that's a clue. Run away.
Okay. Because the distinction is that it's about that identity rather than the person themselves, or what?
Or even a thing, an idea. We might argue about, I said pennies earlier, if we should keep the penny, but maybe we argue about climate change. Maybe we argue about how health insurance. Should we have Medicare for all? Ranked choice voting, getting rid of the electoral college. We can argue about those ideas and those policies. But if I say, well, it's, whatever, when I start with you blank, then that's a problem. That's going to lead down a path that's not good. When BJU went to the Supreme Court to defend its white supremacy, and they lost. And when I realized that was, it was all white supremacy. It wasn't anything that I was defending when I was an employee, white supremacy. I don't want to ever personally choose to get caught. I don't want to ever get caught defending unkindness. I don't want to ever, because I didn't know, because I was white and middle class, I could kind of ignore their racism and think, well, that's not me. But yet I was a part of that. That was wrong. That's a wrong thing. So I don't ever want to be caught part of something that's hateful. So that's how I look at it.
Right. Yeah. Because I think it is sort of about what to watch out for. And that sometimes yes, of course, you don't want to be involved in something hateful. You just might not know that's
Right.
what it is until something.
We heard those, my husband and I am thinking, when I say we heard those sermons that were hateful, and we kind of ignored them because we thought, well, it's not about us and we don't agree with that. And that's just him. We used all those excuses, but it doesn't take long for them to eventually turn their hate on you too. And everybody's at risk. It will eventually come around to you. Whoever you are, they'll eventually hate on you too.
Right.
Nobody's safe in that.
Okay. I'm wondering, now that you are, coming out with all of this evidence, and it's been very interesting, what kind of feedback have you gotten? Because it can be a mixed bag.
Yeah, I was worried. I'll be honest, because I had an official book launch. Oh, what now? I did it on Bob Jones Sr.'s birthday, October 30th. And so it's been a few weeks. And I was worried, because I have received hate, a lot of hate. There hasn't been any. So either they're tired because the university is deteriorating. They're losing students. They're losing money. It's, so they might be tired. It might be that there's enough. They're just, I've got enough backing of my current university and of the press and other things, and I'm gonna leave it, let it lie. I don't know, but I had my book launch. It went out. People were very kind and supportive. My university's been very kind and supportive. So it hasn't happened yet. It happened in the previous 15 years, but it hasn't happened since the book's been out. I sent a copy to Bob Jones III. I don't know if he threw it away or what, but I did send him a copy.
Well, worth a try. See if he's going to read it.
It's about his family. He should want to know, right?
I also find that to just sometimes help people feel better when they either are coming on this show or whatever, they're kind of worried that they're going to get hate or certain responses, that sometimes the hate is based on what they think is evidence, and that they're really arguing certain points and have the how dare yous and this is false. Fine. Okay. That I can kind of take, but I don't want it, but it's because it's unpleasant, but still. But I feel like there's this whole other group that are saying that they don't like your message because they don't want it to be true, because they're not ready to hear it, because they don't yet have anything else. Like, this is my group. These are my people. Don't take it away from me. I already gave up everything for this. So where am I going to go? So I need to just make sure that I limit this really uncomfortable cognitive dissonance by having you be wrong. I need for you to be wrong.
Yeah. It's easier to make presumably this single person wrong than try to negotiate with that. And that might be going on and they're not telling me, or that it might have been happening earlier and they gave up.
It could be that it's happening and they're not telling you. Sometimes I notice people are doing it and they don't even realize that's why they're so motivated to be so angry at you, because you're taking away what they think is their oxygen or their safety net, and they don't know they don't need it, or they don't know there are other choices. And so it's a mixed bag. So just for people to know, if they get hate, there are a lot of different motivations, sometimes having very little to do with you, if at all.
Which is the theme of my whole story. When you think about it, it's not about me necessarily at all. It's about some weird ideology that I got looped up in that was destructive. Yeah, it's
It
not
was
about me.
destructive, right. Interesting. So just as we're finishing up, where can people find your books, all of it, you, etc.?
To get the book right now, it's half off on Amazon.
Ooh, nice.
So it's from Clemson University Press, and you could go to Clemson University Press and get it from there too. But also, it's available through some libraries have an e-version that you can get if you don't want to pay the money for it.
It's such a treat to talk to you. And yeah, I want people to get the book and really see a really important connection and how things are sometimes kept from us that shouldn't
Right.
be kept.
So people can choose wisely.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So thank you for your contribution to that.
All right. Thank you, Rachel.
Take care. One more thing before you go. Thank you so much to Camille for talking with me today about a subject that is so disturbing. And I have a feeling if we scratch the surface of a number of other organizations or religions, universities, political movements, politicians, we're going to be getting to some kind of connection to some kind of supremacy or some organization that we don't want to know that we are being associated with, nor do we want to know that the people who we trust and believe in who are running these organizations are people who think it's just fine to believe in that way. There are people I've talked to over the years, and some even on the show, who left white supremacy, who left that movement because of it being so hateful, who realized that getting out of your car and just beating people up just because of the color of their skin or because there were two men holding hands was not somehow saving the world. It wasn't doing anything for anyone except making you feel big and strong. But beating someone up doesn't actually prove that you're big and strong. It just proves that you can beat someone up and also that you wanted to. So I think that there is something interesting about so much of what Camille talks about, also because she studied rhetoric. I mean, on this show, we talk about language so often, about how much it influences people, how much the rhetoric of certain kinds of movements, of religions, even personal rhetoric, makes us believe in people or turns us off from certain people. But the way people speak, the way people express themselves, the way people express their ideas is really very powerful, and it can persuade the listener in a lot of ways. I was also really struck by how much sort of this quote by her really impacted me. And as you've heard me talk on the show before, every once in a while, someone says something, and I think, yeah, that's going to stay with me because it just made such a huge impact. There was this one line in our whole conversation that I thought, oh my goodness, even though many things are things that I wrote down and many things are things that I want to remember. But this one that kind of gave me chills, which was, you want religion to cause people to be kinder. Yeah, right? I mean, why not? What else is going to do that? I mean, yes, of course, getting involved in causes, but there are a lot of people who will say, I got involved in causes because I learned from my Sunday school teacher about helping others and giving to others or helping the stranger, or I learned in any of my religious teachings, no matter the religion, about how you treat others and how you make sure that you care for other people in the world. But of the people I work with, a lot of them talk to me about how they feel like the group that they got involved in actually caused them to lose a sense of their conscience, to lose their sense of sympathy, and definitely to lose their sense of empathy. The difference being the empathy is where you can relate to someone's experience because you've had something similar, kind of put yourself in their shoes. It's a real sense of knowing and connection. But I think that when you're involved in a religious organization that is cold, that really does tell you that if something bad happens to you, that's on you, or that it's something that you caused. People on the show have talked about being children and finally being sent to the hospital because something was wrong, only to go back to their commune or their compound or their ashram or wherever and just be told, go back to work. No sympathy, no, how was the experience? How did your operation go? Did anyone come to visit you? Usually no one came to visit them. Or they'd be blamed for the illness or told, and this is sometimes something that's awful that I hear that happens sometimes in very abusive and controlling relationships. The other person will say, you cost me a lot of money by going to that hospital. Like somehow they're doing something to this other person, and there is no sympathy or empathy for the pain that they endured or the fear that they had about needing to go to the hospital and not knowing the outcome, how they'd be and if they'd be okay. And so you learn to just sort of be fine, at least on the surface. But one would think, with all of the pictures of, sort of Mary with outstretched arms, giving, doing, with all of these saints, all of these people in the Bible who were supposed to be the guides for us, the ones who taught us how to treat others. Sometimes what you get taught based on the brand of religion that you get involved in is actually not so kind. And they don't necessarily pull from those kinds of stories of giving in any real way, like, i.e., now we want you to do the same. They often will want you to feel like it's your turn then to give, but only to the leadership. So there are people who have left fundamentalist cultic churches and have said, no, we believe in giving. We gave and we gave. And originally, you don't know what you don't know when you're doing this work. And you don't know to ask the following question. Who did you give to? And within a cultic system, who you gave to was the organization. Who you gave to was the leader. And sometimes so that they would get a bigger house or a third private jet. And so you want to be able to get involved in something that matches your conscience so that at the end of the day or at the end of your life, you can look back and think, I did something good. I did something meaningful. I did something with purpose. I made a difference. It was important that I was here. And I made life easier for someone else. One would hope that all religion would be about that, but very often they can dissolve and devolve into places of competition where people are going to be hurt, ostracized, sometimes even killed in the name of religion or in the name of God. It would be great to find a space, though, where you feel like you can be the good you that you want to be. And there are plenty of places like that. And if you find that you get involved in something and it doesn't really matter how you treat others, then just know that's how it's going to be for you. It's not going to matter how they treat you. And so it might then be time to leave, just as Camille did. And now she gets to live her life in a way that is much more in line and aligned with who she is at her core. And I'm very happy for her. Take good care. I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you very much for listening. Please support Indoctrination on Patreon at patreon.com/indoctrination. Be sure to give us a follow on our social media. Find us on Facebook and Instagram using @Indoctrination Podcast. And for Twitter, find us at @_indoctrination. We love hearing from you too. So send us an email at indoctrinationshow@gmail.com. And for more updates on the show, visit our website at www.podpage.com/indoctrination.